Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming Ourselves. In this one, Joel and I are going to be talking about some self-help ideas and not exactly giving you a prescription of do this, do that, it will make your life better, but actually more of a 500,000 feet view, 50,000 feet view of why do we study philosophy? Why would we be in therapy? Why would we be reading these books? And the real answer is they're kind of a means to an end. They're a way to get better, to become healthy, wealthy, and wise, which is a good thing. However, if I'm just turning it on in the background, maybe I'm not using it for that. And maybe I'm just using it as leisure activity. And so kind of the idea that we're thinking about and talking about here is what is the end here? What is the means? What are these a means to an end for? And how can we adequately use them to achieve our goals?
Yeah, Jesse, you make some really great points there. Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're trying to talk about today. I've spent a lot of time reading self-help authors and, watching self-help videos and, listening to those podcasts and Gary Vee and who else? Joe Rogan and I don't know. Ryan Holiday. I'm struggling to find some of these names, even though they're just my bookshelf. Greg McKeown, Srinivas Rao, Scott Galloway, Jim Collins. And that these people are there's a lot of value there. That these are people that have wisdom and they're interesting books to read. But to me, they're not interesting in themselves. They're interesting as a means. That my goal is to become more self-aware. My goal is to become more thoughtful in the way that I engage with other people, in the way that I engage with myself, in the way that I engage with the world. And that these ideas, philosophy, self-help, I've briefly been in therapy a few times. I have the same goal there, but and then all this reading and podcasts. In some ways, even this podcast could be lumped into this category, although I think it's a little different. But the point is that it's a means to that end of becoming healthy, wealthy, and wise, but becoming more thoughtful, becoming more intentional about the way that I engage with myself and others in the world. And it's not just oh, I like it, I just will throw it on because it's fun to listen to. That it's supposed to be not prescriptive, that's the wrong word for it, but that it's supposed to be helpful. It's supposed to be thought-provoking. It's supposed to be a way to grow, not just a way to pass the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it is really, really helpful. I mean, there's things I've read randomly. The book that comes to mind is always Thanks 1,000, where I can't remember who it's by, but a guy goes and tries to thank everybody who's involved in making his cup of coffee, all the way to the coffee farmers in South America, to the cup manufacturer, whatever.
Right. A.J. Jacobs.
Just thinking about gratitude there. Thank you. Yes. And that one has been really fundamental in my life in a practice of gratitude. But there's also been a lot that I've read because I think I'm supposed to be reading self-help. I think it's kind of the it thing to do, the cool thing to do, that I've essentially been phoning it in. And it's like, hey, I have an hour of free time, an hour of leisure time. What do I want to do? Well, maybe instead I should read a self-help book or read a blog post or listen to a podcast. And I think what I've been thinking about is it's okay to have your leisure time just be that. And if there's not an intrinsic motivation to be doing some of these self-help things, there's a balance, obviously. And sometimes you do have to gut it out and I want to make this progress. I don't want to do the steps to make this progress. In that case, it's a little different. But if it's just, I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at, and I'm making progress in other areas of my life, and I want to relax, it's okay to not throw on a self-help book to...
You don't always have to be optimizing.
Go about that, right? Yeah. You don't have to make yourself the best person possible in the most efficient way possible. It's okay to just be a person. And I would argue that might even lead to you becoming more of the person you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think like with the popularity of people like Andrew Tate and Tim Ferriss and Naval Ravikant and Joe Rogan to some extent, like there's a lot of people are searching for this, like for answers to be able to we all have problems. We all have things that we're struggling with. And I think these people are, and they're, it's not just them, but a lot of people are like propped up as people that like they know the problems and they're like working on solutions, and so I'm going to listen to them because they have it figured out. And like, I'm not here to just bash on those names, although sometimes I could. But the point is instead that like they might have a lot of wisdom to them, but they don't have the only answers. They don't have like the only path forward. That like there are there are 100 billion ways to be a valuable human, and there's less than that people. Like there's so many different ways to be good, to be growing, to be valuable, to be happy, that like you don't have to listen to the same people that everyone else is listening to. And that like I like that, Jesse, about like your hobbies can just be hobbies. Like they can just be stuff that you enjoy. Like you can go watch movies because you enjoy watching movies, not because you like really want to analyze them all the time, and not because you like want to become a film critic. But instead you can watch movies because it's fun to go to the theater. It's fun to get popcorn and watch a movie. And you can have hobbies that just are fun. They don't all have to be optimizing something or teaching you something or learning something.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
when you want to be,
And it's
and when you
okay.
want to be learning something and growing, and when you do want to be doing that, like that's the point of philosophy. That's the point of, and I think self-help just is modern philosophy in a lot of ways. And that's the point of it. The point of it is to grow. The point of it is to be learning. The point of it is not just to be some fun hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we have just kind of had an interesting cultural experience over the last 5 or 10 years, where I feel like it became the cool thing to do, and it became
Hmm.
like the hobby, which in a lot of ways I think is a really cool thing, in that maybe it is a more valuable passive hobby. Maybe even just having it on in the background and not focusing still has some value. But I think in some ways that's also maybe missed the mark in where to really get the most out of it. And quick philosophy, quick self-help, uh, maybe gives some quick results, but it doesn't give some more longer lasting results. And so going in and actually doing the work, I think, is a different mindset. And it's not a
Yeah.
mindset that I've mastered by any means. This isn't saying like this is all the way to do it, but it's more, there's mindsets to be in to do a lot of really valuable work, and there's also mindsets to be in to like chill out and relax a little bit. And one of the other things I was thinking about is you're talking about, Andrew Tate, Naval Ravikant, whoever else, Gary Vee, is it's hard to put nuance into a really, really broad audience. And if I'm standing here, ironic saying this on a podcast, right? But if I'm standing here and having an audience of 1 million people or more, it's really hard to give a nuanced perspective to everyone who's listening. And I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind is,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe they've identified a problem. Maybe the solution there, maybe they're just good at identifying problems, and then they feel like they have to make up a solution. And so it's okay to take some of it and not take all of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, so I've taken a handful of courses that like content creators put out about like how to become viral and all those sorts of things. Right. And like, they're not all called that. That's a terrible title, but I've like taken a handful of those courses. And one of the like core tenets of them often is like, you shouldn't be sharing nuance. Like you should have a hard stance, because a hard stance, especially on social media, is what sells. It's what gets views. It's what gets virality, because people are triggered emotionally, and that's what people engage with. It's not the nuance, right? And so, just by the goal of becoming large, like an Andrew Tate, a Tim Ferriss, a Joe Rogan, a Gary Vee, et cetera, like the goal of becoming large like that is to have no nuance, is to have a hardline stance that you don't necessarily believe, but it's viral because it triggers people emotionally, and people will respond to what they're triggered by emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the news does that too. Politicians do
Yeah.
that too, right? It's the way to get airtime. Ryan Halley, who was on our podcast a little bit ago, often says, "Show me the incentives, and I'll show you the outcome." And when the
Mm.
incentives is more views equals more money, then and then the way to get the more views is to not have nuance. Well, we're kind of creating a recipe there that doesn't allow for nuance, which I
Yeah,
think is kind of a tragedy, right? I think that's where we
totally.
often end up talking past each other.
Totally. And I think you think about, that's a part of why, that's not all why, but that's a part of why our society is so polarized as it is, because everywhere you look, there's a lack of nuance. It's extreme headlines on both ends, on all ends, right? Not just politically, but like on in all directions. It's just extreme headlines. It's polarizing headlines, and that's because that's what drives views, and when views lead to money, that's what's driving the content. It's not a search for truth. It's not a search to help people all the time. I mean, there are people that do that, right? But it's a drive for views. It's a drive for engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing is nuance takes time. Hard work takes time. Filling in the gaps takes time. And uh, TikTok or YouTube don't take time, right? Those
Yeah,
are inherently really short form platforms that make it really hard to, to add in the context, right?
yeah,
So I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at on some of these topics. I guess they're, in my mind, related and also a little bit different.
yeah,
But kind of why study philosophy, why be in therapy are similar things, although there's differences between those as well. I'd say therapy is kind of an extra step above in personalized. That's where I found a lot of nuance in my life is
hmm,
talking to therapists and having those long conversations, um, and then studying philosophy, thinking about reading help books, things like that. If I'm just trying to read it really quickly, maybe I'll get a sentence here that's impactful. But the ones that have been more foundational in my life haven't been always the ones that are the best written, but are the ones that I've spent the time in and
yeah.
thought about and processed through.
Yeah. And the purpose there, like the point to get the most out of that, to really like get the value there, they're tools for self-reflection. They're tools to like dive deeper into yourself and figure out, who is the person that I'm trying to become? How can I become that person? And where am I on that path? Like those are the questions that therapy and philosophy are trying to answer, and journaling and self-reflection and meditation and going for long meandering walks without a destination. Like the point of a lot of those practices is that self-reflection, to like really dig into yourself and figure out why do I feel the way that I feel, and is that the way that I want to be thinking and want to be feeling, and how can I change that? And I think it's important to keep that in mind as you kind of engage with these different things. That it shouldn't just be like a way to pass the time, or a way to like, I threw on a podcast in the background, and the guy, I think he was talking about some philosophy stuff, but I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention. Like, the, the, if that's what you're doing, just throw on music. Just throw on something that you're gonna enjoy. Like just throw on something that's fun, right? Throw on something that you like. But if you really want to like make progress in some of these ways, if you really want, which you don't have to, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we talked about last week, is we all have different goals and priorities in life. But if you want to be making progress in some of these different ways, like Yeah, there's ways to do that. And, philosophy, studying philosophy, being in therapy, doing these self-reflection practices, journaling, meditation, et cetera, et cetera. Those are ways to do that. But if you're going to do it, you should do it. Like, don't half-ass it. Like,
Yeah.
really do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full send, right? Really
That's
dive
right.
into it and get in the headspace for that. If that's your goal, right? Align the
Yeah.
goal with the process.
Yeah.
And the process with the goal. Yeah.
Because they shouldn't be ways that, like, they shouldn't be things that make you feel worse about yourself. Like, you shouldn't be like reading philosophy and then coming back in your daily life and being like, I'm constantly falling short of whatever Ryan Holiday talked about on the Daily Stoic this morning. Like, I can never do that. Like, that shouldn't be like, if that's the way that you're engaging with it, you're beating yourself up. Like, don't do that. That's not a healthy way to engage with it. The way that like is a healthy way to engage with it is being like, that it's aspirational, that it like gives you something to think about. It gives you something to process through. It gives you something to journal about later. That it's not about, I'm always falling short, but instead it's like, that's what I'm trying to get to. That's where I'm going. That's what I'm searching for. And that's my goal. And that's how how am I getting there? How am I driving towards that? Rather than kind of this defeatist of like, I'm still not there. Well, if that's kind of the way that you're engaging with it, like, maybe you shouldn't be engaging with it. Maybe instead you should be watching movies and playing video games and, going on walks and sleeping more, right? Maybe you should be caring for yourself. We talked about busy as a decision last week. Like, maybe you should choose not to be busy that way. Maybe those are the things that you shouldn't be prioritizing.
Yeah. And in general, it's just kind of having a good view of like, becoming your best self is a lifelong journey. It's not a sprint. It's a walk. It's a step at a time, right? And so when Ryan Holiday says something and it's like, I don't know how to achieve that right now, great. That's maybe something that's on mile marker 10 or 30 or 1,000, and it's not where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
But it's something I can see in the future now. Oh, cool idea. Build toward it. But it's not. I don't think any of these are meant to be a tool to help you beat yourself up about it, because we're all just on this journey, trying to become our best selves, trying to become healthy, wealthy, and wise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Trying to figure out who we are, trying to figure out what our place is in this crazy world. And if listening to this podcast is making you feel bad about yourself, then turn it off. Go do something else, right? Like, the point is not to use these as things to beat yourself up with. Like, there's enough reasons to beat yourself up in the world. Like, we all are dealing with that all the time. If philosophy, if therapy, or those sorts of things are more ways to beat yourself up, like, it's okay to stop. It's okay not to do them until you're ready to like actually embrace them as and dive into yourself as in self-reflection.
Yeah. Things that take time are tiring often, and things that are tiring deserve breaks. Take a break from it. Even if you're like, this has been really effective, it's okay to still take a break from that. Just to kind of prevent burnout and things like that. So
it's not going to ruin your life. It's not going to ruin all your progress. It's not going to break you. It's not going to make you a bad person. You still have value. You still have worth. It's okay. You can take a break. You've earned it, and you didn't need to earn it. Like, you can just take a break when you need to take a break, because it's hard to be doing all these things. It's hard to be a person. So
yeah, I think that's what I've got for this episode. You got anything else you want to add, Joel?
No, I don't believe I do. Thank you for tuning in to a new episode of Becoming Ourselves. Text us. I want to hear what you think about this. These episodes where we don't have a guest on are episodes where I think it's fun to have the engagement with you listening to it. I think it's fun to hear from you. I've been having some good conversations with some listeners the last couple of weeks about just the launch and some of these new episodes that we've put out. And that's why Jesse and I are doing this. That's what's exciting. So text us. The number's at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching it, or if you're not watching it, if you're listening to it, the number is 503-893-2664. Again, that's 503-893-2664. text us, introduce yourself, just let us know where you're listening from, or have a question or bring something up, and we would love to text you back. So welcome to Becoming Ourselves, a work in progress podcast where we explore how to become healthy, wealthy, and wise. This podcast is for young adults who are, like us, navigating this adult adolescence of self-discovery and personal growth.
I'm Jesse Sigrist, and every week, my brother Joel and I will bring on guests to talk about new perspectives on living a fulfilling life and developing skills along the way. From overcoming obstacles to setting achievable goals, we explore topics that are relevant to all young adults who are discovering their place in the world.
Maya Angelou defined success as liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. We often feature guests to exemplify this success and lead lives that are healthy, wealthy, and wise. These guests will often have expertise in fields such as finance, relationships, careers, or mental and physical health. Our goal is to inspire and challenge both our listeners and each other to become the best versions of ourselves.
Feel free to text us at 503-893-2664 to share your own experiences and be part of the conversation. We'll always reply. Let's embark on this journey of becoming ourselves together.